Somewhere in the Kalahari Desert, a hunter crouches over a single footprint pressed into dry sand. To you or me, it's just a mark in the dirt. To him, it's a report. He can read the animal's age, its weight, how long ago it passed this exact spot, whether it's limping, whether it's afraid, and which direction it's heading right now. No GPS, no camera trap, no app pinging his phone. Just a sense so refined that Western science didn't even have a proper name for it until the 1990s, when a researcher finally admitted that what these trackers do isn't instinct, it's a full, structured system of reasoning. Some scientists now argue it might be the very first science humans ever practiced. And here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. You were born with the same hardware. Every single human alive today still carries the biological wiring for senses we've simply stopped using. Senses sharp enough to track animals across a desert, navigate oceans with no instruments, and predict a storm before a single cloud appears. Today, we're resurrecting 6 of them. And by the time we get to the 4th one, you'll understand why it made professional Western navigators question everything they thought they knew about the human brain. Hey, welcome back. If you're new here, this channel exists for one reason: to dig up the strange, hidden, and forgotten sides of human history and human biology. Things that sound like myth until you realize they're just underused muscles. Today's topic sits exactly on that line: senses. We were all taught there are 5 senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. Neat little list, textbook diagram, case closed. Except that list is over 2,000 years old. It was basically invented by Aristotle, and modern neuroscience has since identified far more: balance, temperature, pain, even your body's internal sense of where its own limbs are in space without looking at them. But beyond raw biology, there's something even more interesting: trained senses. Perceptual skills sharpened through sheer necessity until they start to look, from the outside, like a 6th sense. For tens of thousands of years, staying alive depended on reading the world with a level of precision most of us have completely and totally lost. So let's bring these senses back to life, one at a time, starting with the ground beneath our feet. Let's go back to the Kalahari hunter from the intro. Anthropologist Louis Liebenberg spent decades embedded with sand trackers across southern Africa, and what he documented completely reshaped how scientists think about early human cognition. His conclusion was bold: tracking may be the origin of the scientific method itself. Here's why. Expert trackers don't just glance at a print and know things by magic. They form an actual hypothesis. This animal is moving slowly, favoring its left side. Then they search for supporting evidence: a dragging hoof mark, disturbed grass, a broken twig at the right height. If the new evidence doesn't fit, they revise the hypothesis. That is, step by step: hypothesis, evidence, revision. That is the scientific method, just applied to a footprint instead of a laboratory. A skilled tracker, standing over a single trail, can typically work out the species, sex, and rough age of the animal. How much time has passed since it walked through, sometimes down to the hour. Whether the animal is healthy, injured, pregnant, or exhausted, based on stride length and the depth and angle of pressure in the print. Whether the animal has noticed it's being followed, based on subtle changes in gait and direction. This is not mysticism. It is an unbelievably well-calibrated visual and pattern recognition system, built from early childhood and refined over literal decades, passed down almost like a scientific apprenticeship, except the classroom is the open desert and the subject is the Earth itself. And here's the twist that should stick with you. Modern humans still have the exact same visual hardware. Your eyes are not the bottleneck. What's missing is the training. Your brain is still fully capable of noticing micropatterns in grass, dirt, and shadow. It's simply never been asked to. This skill hasn't vanished from the species. It's just been switched off by convenience. Here's one that sounds almost unbelievable until you hear the chemistry behind it. Multiple desert-dwelling and indigenous groups have long been documented detecting incoming rain, shifting wind, and even nearby water sources by smell, sometimes hours before any of it becomes visible. Part of this has a rock-solid scientific explanation. When rain hits dry soil, it releases a compound called petrichor, a mix of plant oils and bacterial byproducts that our noses are actually quite sensitive to. Most people can smell it faintly right as the rain begins or just after. But people who live entirely outdoors, with a nervous system constantly tuned to environmental microshifts, have historically picked up on these signals far earlier, often while the sky is still completely clear. Stack on top of that wind reading. Tiny shifts in air temperature, humidity, and even the mineral smell carried on a change of breeze were used across many cultures as an early warning system for incoming weather, long before barometers or satellites existed. This was was never superstition. This was decades of pattern training compressed into an instant sensory reflex, using a sense most of us have basically retired, because it's easier to just check an app than to check the air. Now here's the one I promised you, the one that made Western navigators seriously reconsider what the human brain is capable of. Polynesian voyagers crossed thousands of miles of open Pacific Ocean, island hopping across an area larger than the entire continent of Russia, without a compass, without a written map, and without a single modern navigational instrument. So how does a person cross an ocean with literally nothing? They used a system now known as wayfinding. And it wasn't one trick, it was an entire integrated sensory network running all at once. Star paths, memorizing the exact rising and setting points of dozens of specific stars along the horizon, essentially using the night sky as a rotating compass. Swell patterns, literally feeling the rhythm and direction of ocean swells through the hull of the canoe with their own bodies, because different swells bend and reflect off distant islands in detectable, learnable patterns. Cloud formations, certain cloud shapes, and even subtle color shifts hover differently above islands than they do above open ocean, acting like a visual signpost from miles away. Bird behavior. Specific seabirds fly out to fish at dawn and reliably return to land at dusk, functioning as living, breathing compasses. This demanded an internalized, full-body sense of rhythm and motion, essentially treating the entire ocean as one giant instrument panel, read through the skin and the inner ear as much as the eyes. Master navigators, called wayfinders, trained for years, sometimes decades, to hold this entire multi-sensory map inside their heads at once, with zero written backup. And this isn't ancient legend dressed up for a documentary. In 1976, a double-hulled canoe named the Hokulea sailed from Hawaii all the way to Tahiti using nothing but traditional wayfinding. No modern instruments whatsoever, arriving exactly where it was supposed to. It proved, in front of modern scientists, that this wasn't folklore. It was precision navigation, just channeled through senses most of us never learned to use. You've probably heard the claim that Inuit languages have 50 words for snow. The exact number is genuinely debated by linguists, but the deeper truth behind the myth is what actually matters here. Inuit and other Arctic peoples developed an extraordinarily refined sensory vocabulary for reading snow and ice, because getting it wrong could kill you. Different snow textures indicate completely different structural stability underfoot. Certain wind-carved snow ridges, known as sastrugi, don't just look different from smooth snow. They can be read like a compass, because their shape reveals the prevailing wind direction. In a total whiteout, when every visual landmark has disappeared, sastrugi can literally tell you which way is home. Ice thickness could be judged through subtle color shifts and, more surprisingly, through sound. A practiced ear can distinguish safe ice from dangerous ice purely by the tone it produces underfoot or under a sled runner, a skill combining touch, sound, and vision into a single trained survival instrument. This is a sense built for an environment where a single miscalculation didn't just mean discomfort, it meant death, and it was passed down, generation to generation, through nothing but observation and practice. Here's one most people have never even considered. Hunters across multiple cultures, from parts of East Africa to the Americas, learn to read vibrations transmitted directly through the ground, sometimes lying flat with an ear pressed to the earth, to detect the footsteps of animals, or people, from remarkable distances. This works because solid ground conducts certain low-frequency vibrations more efficiently than air does. A skilled listener could distinguish the weight, gait, and even rough size of an approaching animal purely from the rhythm and intensity of vibrations most modern humans would never consciously register. There's a modern parallel that proves this sense is still very much alive in the human nervous system. Blind individuals today have been documented developing a form of human echolocation, using tongue clicks and listening to the returning echoes to navigate entire city blocks, identify the size of a room, and even detect the presence of a parked car. Researchers studying these individuals have found their brains actually repurpose the visual cortex to process these echoes. In other words, this isn't some lost ability confined to ancient history. It's a dormant sense sitting in your nervous system right now, waiting for a reason to switch back on. For most of human history, there was no ingredients label, no poison control hotline. If you wanted to know whether a plant would feed you or kill you, your only tools were your own senses, refined over a lifetime, and refined further over countless generations before you. Traditional healers and foragers across countless cultures developed an extremely precise sensory library for plants, cataloging subtle differences in smell, texture, and a cautious testing taste to separate the nourishing from the lethal. This wasn't guesswork. It was an oral encyclopedia, encoded not in books, but in trained sensory memory, tested and corrected across generations until the margin for error was razor thin. This same sensory precision extended to medicine. Long before laboratories existed, healers identified plants with real, usable medicinal properties, some of which modern pharmacology has since confirmed contain the exact active compounds these traditions claimed all along, using nothing but smell, taste, and closely observed effect. This is a sense modern life has almost completely erased. Most of us today couldn't distinguish a safe mushroom from a deadly one if our lives depended on it, because for the vast majority of human history, they genuinely did. Here's a subtler one, and honestly, one of the most fascinating. Many ancient and indigenous cultures maintained a remarkably precise internal sense of time and direction, with no clocks, no compasses, using the sun's position, shadow length, and even subtle temperature shifts throughout the day. Aboriginal Australian cultures developed some of the most sophisticated direction-based knowledge systems ever documented by linguists. In several of these languages, cardinal directions are built directly into everyday grammar. Instead of saying, "the cup is to your left," a speaker says, "the cup is to the north," constantly, in ordinary conversation, every single day of their life. Researchers studying speakers of these languages have found something remarkable. They develop an internal, compass-like sense of direction so precise that they can point accurately toward a specific location even in completely unfamiliar terrain, or indoors, with zero visual landmarks to rely on. This is a sense of orientation that modern city life has almost entirely erased. We've outsourced direction to our phones so completely that most people today genuinely cannot tell you which way is north, while standing perfectly still in their own living room. So why did modern humans lose all of this? The answer is simple. Necessity built these senses, and comfort quietly dismantled them. When your survival depends on reading a footprint, smelling incoming rain, or feeling an ocean swell through your own body, your brain allocates enormous resources towards sharpening that exact skill. But the moment technology takes over the job, GPS replaces direction sense, weather apps replace wind reading, supermarkets replace foraging, the brain simply stops maintaining a system it no longer needs. Neuroscientists describe this as a matter of attention and repeated practice, not missing biology. The hardware never left. The demand for it did. And here's the genuinely optimistic part. Modern research on trackers, wayfinders, and Arctic navigators strongly suggests these are learnable skills, not rare genetic gifts handed to a lucky few. Several outdoor education and survival programs today are actively reviving tracking and nature reading skills, using the exact same core principles ancient cultures relied on for tens of thousands of years: slow observation, repeated pattern recognition, and hands-on mentorship. We didn't lose these senses, we just stopped listening to them. So the next time you're actually outside, genuinely outside, away from a screen, try this. Stop and notice one single thing you'd normally scroll straight past: the direction of the wind, the smell in the air before it rains, the shape of a cloud sitting a little too still. It sounds small, but it's the exact same starting point every tracker, every wayfinder, and every Arctic navigator in human history once had. If this genuinely blew your mind, hit subscribe. We go down rabbit holes exactly like this one every single week. And tell me in the comments, out of everything we covered today, which forgotten sense would you most want back? I'll pin my favorite answer. See you in the next one.